Minister Champagne is live with us in studio to talk about that right now. Hi, Minister. It's great to see you.
What a pleasure.
Congratulations on your new-ish role. I know you were assigned it before the campaign, but you retained it.
Really.
Thanks for making the time. I do have some questions on that tax cut in a second, but first I want to just get some clarity. There were a lot of questions to you today outside of Cabinet about whether there's going to be a budget or not.
Right.
I want to ask you explicitly, will there be an actual budget in 2025?
There will be a fall economic statement when we're coming back. And what I said is that we need to go in the order, the logical order. So you just said it very well. This is a flagship promise from the Prime Minister. So the first assignment, the first thing coming out of the first Cabinet meeting is the middle class tax cut. This is going to affect 22 million families or 22 million people in this country. This is very significant. And this is the first thing we're going to be doing. The second thing, you have a throne speech because we just started the legislature, so we need to do that. And when we're coming back in the fall, there'll be a substantive fall economic statement where we're going to take into account of what has happened and provide clarity, transparency to Canadians. And I've said it again when I was doing that. I want to be prudent. I want to provide stability, predictability. And you would agree with me, we live in a very unpredictable world in terms of the macroeconomic picture we're having. Next week, I'm going to be hosting the G7 finance minister with the central bank governors. We're going to try to look into that a bit. So by then, we'll have a better understanding of these macro trends that could have an impact on the Canadian economy. But in the meantime, we're going to do what matters to Canadians, reduce their taxes, have the throne speech, and then when we're back, we'll have a fall economic statement.
Are you sure, though, with all due respect, Minister, that Canadians had the impression that transparency and clarity would be delayed until the fall? I think the Prime Minister in particular campaigned on being straight with Canadians about how all of the stuff he is promising to do would actually unfold. And there are big questions. For example, your platform didn't even include the potential impact of, or the economic impact of, a trade war with the United States, some of which we're already feeling. You've made very specific promises on the spending side, for example, around government operations that don't appear to add up by any outside analysis I've seen. Like, don't Canadians deserve to know sooner rather than later how you're going to do what you've said you're going to do?
As soon as we can. Like I said, the first order of business, reduce tax for Canadians. That's the first order of business. And like you said, passing that to Parliament before recess is already something we'll have to work with other party to make sure that we have. But I say we have received a mandate from Canadians to be bold, to act for them, and I'm sure parliamentarians will take that into account because this is having the back of Canadians at the time, which is difficult for them. Affordability is the first thing that Canadians have been talking to us, apart from the tariff war with the United States. Then what I'm saying is that you need a throne speech. And there'll be no surprise. My point is that we've been telling Canadians what are the priorities of this government. Very simple. We're going to fight the tariffs from the United States. We're going to grow the Canadian economy in one economy. We're going to diversify our economy. We're going to invest in our military. We're going to invest in infrastructure. We're going to invest in housing. So the frame and the priorities that have been set are going to be the same. What we're saying is that you need to go in logical order. The first thing is that you need to have the tax cut for the middle class. That's the first thing we promise and we deliver. The second thing, the throne speech to set the priorities. That's how our parliamentary system works. And then when you're back, you have the fall economic statement, which is going to be substantive. So you're going to provide a picture with more certainty, more transparency. And I've said to the folks, I want to be very prudent. This is going to be the hallmark of this government. We're going to be prudent because by then we'll have a better assessment of all these external risks that we need to take into account to provide the best picture to Canadians so they see the fiscal framework under which we're operating. But the priorities that the Prime Minister have said will remain the same. So that's why I'm saying we've been engaging with Canadians across this nation for weeks, if not months on that. So they know what we intend to do, how we intend to do, and now they're seeing how fast we can do them.
But I think the missing piece of that puzzle is, will you actually do it? And how are you going to pay for it? And the reason so for example, for the fall economic statement, I take your point that it's going to be more thorough. But I remember your predecessor, Chrystia Freeland, instructing us many times, this is not a mini budget. This is just an update on where finances are concerned. And I'll point to, for example, other things that have happened with your government in the past where you've made a promise to cut consultants and instead the spending on consultants has gone up 13%. Like, how are we as Canadians to hold your government accountable for what you're promising if you're not going to be transparent about it for 6 months or so? And I take your point about the timeline, throne speech. There's still another month.
And I would say this is a new government. So let's start, if we're going to start, this is a new government, new legislature, new prime minister. So the direction is very clear. He's been
But you're
very,
still the finance minister.
Yeah, I'm still the finance minister, and I would say the world has changed also in 6 weeks. So Canadians understand that. And my objective to them is to provide them the best picture of the financial account of Canada, to be prudent. I mean, you'll hear me use that word more and more. Prudence, in a very...
What does it mean?
Well,
Like in
prudent is
layman's
that you
terms,
take as much information as you have to make sure you provide them with the best possible picture. That's why I said when we're going to come back in the fall, we're going to be in a position to provide them with a fiscal update, which are going to be substantive. And like I said, there will be no surprises because, the way normally I would agree with you that, the calendar year is quite different this year because we had an election in April. And that changed a bit the calendar of how things normally happen in Canada. But what I'm saying is that first you need to provide the tax break to Canadians, then the throne speech, then you have a substantive fall economic statement. So you have a clearer picture of the finance. But what I'm saying is that there will be no surprises in that because we have already outlined in pretty much details during the campaign exactly how we're going to do it. And we're going to reduce the operational spending. We went from 9% to 2%. We're going to say then we can invest more. So no, spend less, invest more. I mean, those are the type of things you'll see. But at that time, we'll be in a position to provide a picture.
Again, I have to respectfully challenge how transparent you were during the campaign. And I would highlight 2 things there. The first being that spending from going down from 9% to 2%. Yes, you've outlined how much less you're going to spend, but the math isn't made clear. You're going to cap the public service. I don't know if that means the number of public servants or the $65 billion a year payroll. If you factor in just attrition, that's only saving $1 billion a year. You've said you're going to get to savings of $15 billion a year through efficiencies, through cutting down on consultants. Again, there are no specifics attached to that.
Well, I would say what you just said is...
But just really quickly, I would also add, when it comes to the economic impact of the trade war, that was not factored into your costing, at all during the campaign. That's not radical transparency.
Well, I would say you just outlined a number of things that you've seen in the platform. That's already details into how you do that. What I'm saying is that because of the way the calendar year worked this year with the election, it just makes sense to do the first thing first, which is to have the back of Canadians. So for me, putting all our efforts to pass this tax breaks for Canadians, for me, it's priority number 1. Because folks who are watching at home and said, give me the tax break that I need now. This is what I've been asking. This is what we campaign on. And that's what we got a mandate from Canadians to deliver. And that's, we say, the first order of business of all the things that this new government currently could do. The first thing we do for Canadians is to give them a tax break. The second thing, we'll have a throne speech because that's how you need to do when you have a new legislature. Then you'll have a fall economic statement.
There is a month in between there before the House
rises. Well, there's not many days. You're talking in months. I would say if you look at the parliamentary calendar, you're talking in days.
You have the power as the government to extend that.
Well, what I'm saying, I'm working on the framework that I have today, but by then we will also have a clearer picture of the macro trend you're seeing. We've seen, like I said, next week we'll have a discussion with the G7 minister, governors, the central bank governors. So my point in terms of transparency and prudency and predictability, I think we're providing that to Canadians because Canadians understand that in a very, there's a number of things that are going on in the world almost on a daily basis with respect to this trade war that could have impact on supply chain in Canada. How is that going to impact the Canadian economy? So we're going to take that into account.
We've seen some indicators already of a slowdown.
But at the same time, you've seen recent developments, just let me say, between China and the United States just recently. So I think by then we'll have a better sense of where this is going. But in the meantime, we're focusing on what we can do at home. The Prime Minister said we can do far more for ourselves than anyone else can take away from us. So this is about making sure we provide the tax cut, making sure that the whole machinery is working towards delivering. We say we need to invest more in defense. We need to invest more in housing. We need to invest more in infrastructure. So this is all in motion. And at the time that we're going to come back, we're going to provide that picture to Canadians.
Do you have, just explicitly, do you believe you have the support to pass this tax cut from other parties? I'll ask the Conservatives. They're up next. But they had campaigned on a bigger tax cut, but essentially the same thing.
I could hardly imagine anyone standing in the House.
Do you have assurances?
I would hardly imagine anyone standing in the House to say we don't want to have the back of Canadians after an election like that, where people are saying, "Give us a break." and you would have someone standing in this house. I'd like to see their face on TV to say, I'm standing against providing a tax break to Canadians at the time they need.
Does that mean you assume the support? You don't know for sure you
well,
have
I would
it?
say I would be surprised, and I'd like to see the face of the people who would say that they are not willing to support the government in helping Canadians at a time of need. With this kind of uncertainty, you know, the thing, let's not forget, Vashi, the first thing that we've seen, and this whole uncertainty, unpredictability, it's affordability. That's a daily issue. It's a weekly issue. It's a monthly issue for folks. So, you know, remember that the median income in this country is around $37,400. So when you provide a tax cut like that to 22 million people in this country, this is significant. This is significant for a lot of folks. Let's remember that everyone who's been elected, anyone who's going to go back in that building is there to serve Canadians. And Canadians have spoken, and they said, you need to be there for me and have my back. That's what we're delivering.
I know that your time is limited, but you brought up the issue of affordability. I do want to ask you specifically on affordability and the pledges your government has made around, and your party made during the campaign around housing. Today, the new Minister of Housing, Gregor Robertson, in response to a question about whether home prices need to go down in order to make them more affordable, said no, that the government instead needs to focus on increasing the supply of affordable homes. The day before, the Prime Minister had a different stance that essentially, you know, conceded, yeah, the housing prices, in not so many words, would be, why would you think we would think differently, that housing prices need to go down? Which is it? Well,
to be honest, I've learned one thing in politics. Be mindful of commenting on things you've not seen. So I've not seen the comments of Gregor today, the new minister, or what the Prime Minister.
What is your view as the finance minister? Do home prices need to go down?
Well, you need to do both. You need to increase the stock, which will also have an impact on prices, I would say, because that's the thing. You know, in a country like Canada, with the landmass we have, we should vastly increase the stock, you know, which has been a problem, which is not just it's just you know, someday someone will look back and say, how did we get there? Because in a way, the market should have been able to supply that kind of housing in a country, which is not, you know, you have smaller country where they don't have land mass to build, but we have ample land mass. So I think when we're talking about efficiency, building homes in Canada and the new agency that the Prime Minister said, we need to get faster, we need to get permitting. Modular housing, you know, I want to go visit these companies because for me, you know, we're still building homes here the way we used to do that 100 years ago, whilst the innovation and technology has changed in many countries. So there's a lot of things we need to do. So by increasing the stock, it will have an impact on prices.
And you think that's necessary? I'll tell you why I'm asking. Because yes. Essentially the criticism of your party is you were so successful with, for example, older Canadians who own homes, who don't want to see them devalued, that's what's informing the position that Minister Robertson took, that essentially you can affect affordability without dropping prices, which outside studies have shown would take 20 to 40 years to be the case.
Yeah,
it certainly won't help. It certainly won't help young Canadians who can't afford a home right now. So I just want to be clear, as the finance minister, you do think home prices need to drop to make housing more affordable?
Well, in a sense, by it's kind of an equation. If you increase the stock, and let's remember also, Vashi, the housing market is very different. I come from rural Canada, so it's a very different type of set of circumstances. I think when you're looking, and I was not there when you made...
But he comes from downtown Vancouver.
I know, and that's why I'm saying I don't know the comments. I was not there, or what he was, in which context they said that. But let's remember, for folks who are watching at home, we don't have one housing market in this country. We have many regional markets. And, you know, where I come from, the issue is about increasing the stock. It's not just about the price. So you have to be mindful.
Everywhere feels like the price is a lot right now.
The price have increased significantly. Yeah. That's why I say what we need in terms of affordability now is to provide housing stock. That is going to help young families, because the challenge is always to buy your first home. And you want to get into the housing market. I remember that when I was in Europe, it's the same thing. Everyone wanted to just get in the market. And providing a greater stock is what we need to do. And we're going to focus on innovation and technology to do that and build more in this country.
I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. Thank you for your time, Minister.
I
appreciate it. Thanks for coming into the studio.